Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here. If you're new, I'm Jimmy. We're making it work. We're going to try to do an intro somewhere in between corny and realistic. If you want to spend a day in an auto repair shop, see what's like behind the scenes, what goes through a mechanic's head with a little bit of experience, trying to fix some cars, get people back on the road, and take care of my own family at the same time, spend a day with me. Let's do it. Should be fun. That's where I got my screw from for that Lincoln yesterday. I didn't put it away because I was pretty busy without Joe here working on almost every car that comes in for repairs. Bill and Riley are handling oil changes, some alignments, tires and stuff like that. And basically every car that comes in needing any kind of repairs or diagnostics, and most of the brake jobs, then I'm doing all that stuff. And it's been pretty busy considering it's the holiday month. Usually in December, things kind of go up and down, slow days, busy days, but it's been steady busy. Joe's out with the COVID still, so I'm not sure if he's coming in today either. It's hump day, and there's Joe's toolbox. All right, enough horsing around, time to go to work. 2001 Ford Windstar. A true classic in every sense of the word. 128,246 miles on this. Love rating. You know, I'm a little bit of clutter, some clothes here and there, no food or any of that stuff, so it's a 5, about average. I like it. 2001 too, so when's the last time you guys saw a 2001 Windstar? Especially one the customer wants to spend money on. I'm gonna do inner tie rod ends and an alignment. He said, I think I also need lower control arms, but can you just align it for now and I'll do those another time? So I explained how that might affect the alignment up front, but nah, go ahead, do the inner tie rods and align it the best you can. Let's do it. It's about twice the life expectancy, by the way. Oh, gravity check. And that is super slight. Okay. Got it. Gotta bend my cotter pins to make it easier to get out. You can force them out of there, but I don't want to force it. Bend them a little straighter. Makes it a little easier. Put the knot on a couple threads just because I'm reusing the outers. We're only doing the inners. Ah, you guys got whacked. I'm going to leave the nut in the same place, hopefully, and measure the amount of thread showing so I can get it in the ballpark with the new parts. You can also count the turns if you so desire, but since I'm doing alignment, I don't have to be that precise. Plus the replacement parts can be slightly different in that regard as well. So I'll just measure from the end of the threads to the nut, then I'll measure the overall length of the tie rod end if it's much of a difference. Usually isn't, but if it is, then I'll have to compensate a tiny bit. That way I don't have to do 17 turns when I'm setting the toe kind of thing, you know. Someone greased the threads, so that's, you're not supposed to grease those probably. Maybe a tiny little bit so it doesn't rust, but we are dealing with 1 1/4 inch. Clamps are not really reusable. I have had some luck stretching that back out and reusing them, but I usually just use a tie wrap or put a new one on. You also got to watch there's a vent tube that goes to the boots. You got to make sure you get the vent tube back in when you put the boot back on. There's a little vent tube. See that up there? And the little vent tube's got to go back in when you slap the boot back on there. My new Mac Tools tie rod end remover. What is this? TR899. It's kind of big and bulky. I'm not sure if it'll fit in there, but I'm going to try it. I got an Icon wobbly extension, which actually are really nice. I like them. And then I'm going to use a Tecton 1/2-inch ratchet. If I can fit it all in there, we'll see. There's not a lot of room. Kind of worked. And it seems really cumbersome, I think. There you go. I think for most car tie rod ends, it could probably be about a third smaller. Maybe if they sell 2 different sizes of them, and they might even do that, I don't know. Maybe I bought the big one. Sometimes there's a lock washer. Sometimes there's a roll pin. Sometimes the phone rings, and sometimes there's a thread lock. And sometimes the phone keeps ringing. And clean the oil off the threads and all, and put Loctite on it, I think, because I don't see any lock washers or anything on this setup. These replacements come with little roll pins. You have to put them in. They don't come installed, so I tapped them in. They actually move fairly easily, but it's just a safety device that goes in past the threads, and it'll keep it from pulling over the threads if they do loosen. But you know, if you have a tie rod end on it and the tie rod end jam that's locked, the chances of this turning outside of this pretty unlikely, but safety measure, because losing steering, that's no fun. Nobody wins. I'm going to thread this on, lock it down, and then they give you a packet of grease, and you fill this area with grease to make sure it prolongs the life of it a little bit, keep moisture from getting in more than anything, because it's already greased, really. I'll scoot you back a little bit. There you go. Maybe you can see that better. I want you guys to enjoy the tie rod end install. Of course, the frame's in the way. That's always nice. I got it on about a thread, so it means I'm gonna have to bump it every turn. I'm gonna have to bump it back so it'll clear the frame, because this little notch here, it isn't in the right spot. The Ford engineers were like, "Hey man, the golf course is gonna be closed. The sun's setting. Let's go." I think this is off 1/4 inch. Ah, don't worry about it. It probably wasn't exactly like that, but it was something like that. I'm gonna finish threading this on, and we'll come back when I'm punching in those little roll pins. The phone's ringing, and the Icon hammer is far too big and powerful, so I'm just gonna use my little ball peen. It's the smallest hammer I have. Once you tap them little roll pins in, you're home free. It can't come off. It can still loosen, but it won't come off. I threw a tie wrap on there loosely. Put it on a little bit ahead of time because the vent tube goes over it, and you got to feed it around there and get it all started otherwise. So if you feed it in ahead of time without that, you know, you're not battling all that stuff. So you just leave it a little loose. So I have to lift it back up to hold on to that vent tube while I put it in place. If you use cheap tie wraps, they'll pull off, but its only job is to hold the boot on while it extends and contracts. And you got to flush cut it if you can get your flush cutter in there somewhere. Make sure the outer part of the boot falls into the flat on the tie rod end. There's a flat spot where the boot will just kind of snap into it. All right, now I can put the nut on. I'm not going to use the nut they give you with that because it's half the thickness of the original one, so I'll just use the original one. That's 1 1/4 inch, right? You got it. There's some glue and miscellaneous materials in the threads. We'll make it work. I don't want to make Rain Man race sad, so I'm going to get a new cotter pin. Feeling pretty generous today. Been having a great week. So let's just keep it rolling. Go like this, just because the ABS sensor's too close. So what I'm gonna do is, oh, it's magnetized. My side cutters are making the cotter pin fall. I'm gonna do it this way. The other way it was butterflied coming off, but it ain't butterflied now. I feel better about it. Can anybody tell me what's gonna happen next? Because I am gonna align it, right? So should I tighten that jam nut, or wait till I check the alignment and then tighten it? And if it's green when I check it and I don't tighten it, what happens then? You guys know I'm gonna tighten it. It's way easier to re-loosen it than it is to see it coming back on the hook with a wheel pointing in the wrong direction. I don't want to make you guys watch another 20-25 minutes. Well, what was it, about 4 minutes I edited it down to? I don't want to make you guys watch the whole thing again, right? So I'll just time lapse it. We'll have a little fun with it. That's all. Play a little music and enjoy yourself. They're dropping off another transmission rebuilt from the same rebuilder. This is the fourth one they're done for us. The first three they did for us all came back with problems, so this will be the fourth. It's not up to me. Cable. I'm gonna move that plate. I don't know why it's there. I might have put it there when I did the Camaro last week. Uh-oh. That's gonna be uncomfortable. Well, that's unfortunate. The only way you adjust caster and camber on these is major work on the strut mounts. You got to take the wiper cowl off. You got to drill spot welds, loosen the bolts, move the strut forward and back for caster and in and out for camber, and then tighten the bolts back up. And sometimes you can rivet them back together if you want to lock the measurements in, but the bolts will hold it. Let me see what they want to do. I know we're on a limited budget. It's not a go for it type of deal, so I'll have to talk to them up front and see if we're going to do that. I'm going to set the tow real quick for now in case they say no. That'll be done at least, because I know I have to do that part. Lock that down. I got to take away a little toe on the right side. Okay, now the work I'm doing with this job is done, I'm going to make a printout of the alignment and a printout of the procedure to correct the caster and camber and see if we do that. Alrighty. That's unfortunate. Ran out of paper. And there was no paper in the machine. Oh, look at these. Someone left some nice cutters in there. I'll take them. You get free tools when you load the paper in the printer. Front camber and caster, that's what they're going to want to see. Paul's going to go drive it, make sure it goes straight down the road. The customer is out of money. He's going to do like, we got a list of like 10 things. We're going to do one thing every month or so. You guys remember this one? Oh yeah, 2016 Ford Fusion. Right out of the Mako body shop. You guys might remember, if you've been a long-time viewer, this is the Ford Fusion. Oh, geez, man, the skunks have been kicking ass on this thing. Goodness gracious. I got to start it up just so I can put a window down before I get a ticket. That doesn't sound right. This car came in, there's a screw missing out of the door panel. That's weird. This car came in, the throttle body was falling off the intake and it was doing this weird surge thing, and I found there was only one bolt in the throttle body and it wasn't attached. It wasn't even tight, the one bolt that was left in it. Someone apparently had done a starter and left the intake loose, the throttle body loose. In any event, we fixed that. They're back saying it overheats. And they didn't ask about the check engine light, the tire light, and the airbag light, but this car was wrecked pretty bad. I don't know if it has a salvage title or something, I'm guessing. Someone bought it like at an auction and put it back together and painted it themselves to have a car. No harm in that. But the car is in pretty bad shape for a 2016. So we'll take a look, see what's going on. They said they're losing coolant. They said it's never overheated, but the gauge goes way too high. But right now there's no temperature gauge on the display. I don't know. I'm just going to check tires real quick, see what kind of codes we got. Make sure it's not a fan control circuit code, something like that. And then we'll take a look under the hood. I don't see any coolant leaks. I do see traces of coolant up here where the reservoir is. But I don't see any. I see plenty of oil leaks and other problems. It's missing the underbelly pan. But the fan blades turn. You know, this car was wrecked, I mentioned a couple of times probably already. The fan blades turn, so I know they're not bound up in the radiator or the shroud or anything crazy like that. I've seen that before too, so it's missing the wheel well liner. But that's probably not a factor in it running hot. The earlier Camaros and Firebirds had an air dam here, and people would take it off or break it hitting curbs, and then their car would start overheating on the road, on the highway, because that air deflector was meant to push air up into the radiator. But this doesn't have a setup like that. So I think my next course of action is to put my scanner on it, check the codes, and check to see if the fans are working. Because we're dealing with a thermostat or a fan type problem, I think. I don't see an obvious leak. We're going to get in the old Fusion 2016 with the Phoenix Light 2 remotely. Got the key on inside, check my codes, and then we'll run the fans. We know it needs a battery. The battery kept going dead, so let's go in and try to run the fan with the engine running, because it times out with the push button start. It also times out, and at the 3 timeouts I tried to start it up to do it and the battery was dead. So got multiple problems with this car. I gave him quite a list last time and we only fixed the throttle body, so we'll see what happens. I'm not sure on these Fords if it'll even let you run the fan with the engine running, but we're going to try it. The red is the high-speed #1 can. That's the fastest one for things that need the most important information, critical to safety and operation of the vehicle. Air conditioning, you know, and it gets less and less important as you go further up. We're going to note whatever codes we have, send Katie a report, and then try to run the fans. So we'll come back in a second. Actuation test. Let's see what happens. Firm shift, fuel oil pressure, fuel pump, canister, generator voltage, grill shutter, fan control, high speed. I want to see fan control, low speed. On. Uh-oh, I don't hear anything. And the fan test tool. Not operational. Neither fan works on low speed. One's for AC, one's for engine, most likely. I'm gonna have to check for power going to the fan, but I'm gonna check it on high speed first. Usually, if it's overheating, it won't work on either, because it'll just put it on high speed at a certain point and stop it from overheating if it continues to climb after it thought it turned on the low speed. Oh. Maybe not. That's unusual. We know we're getting power on the high speed, and we know the fan motors are capable of working. Some have dual circuit motors, some use a resistor or a secondary relay to send a different amount of voltage to the fan for low and high speed. Now maybe they'll work now that they ran. Nope, okay, no low speed. I'm gonna let it run a little bit. I'm gonna go look up the fan low speed, see how it lessens the fan speed, whether it's a resistor or a secondary circuit. And we'll test that when we come back. All right, the fan's working. Turned on at 220 degrees, and then it shut off. Looks like the coolant tank's overfilled, so I'm thinking he's seeing coolant drip on the ground when it pushes some coolant out to purge the excess. Coolant fan operation, no error. Fan control high fault, no error. Fan control low fault, no error. But it does have a low fault. It never runs on low, it only runs on high. So I think what I'll focus on is making sure the gauge is accurate, and then find out why it doesn't work on low. Which means there's a fuse somewhere in here. Probably in here. Goes the other way, silly. Because they were like, it's not good enough that normal way, we gotta put it the other way. Okay. That's what makes you happy. I'm gonna check these fuses, 59, 60, and 63. They power out from the relays to the two fan motors for different speeds. So I'm going to check those relays and the fuses and see what's going on with those. I'm going to go see what the gauge reads right now when it's at 208. Oh, scrolling through the dash, this is what I'm seeing. Temperature is right around halfway. He is low on gas. Obviously the low fuel light's on. I don't see a high temperature gauge. Let's do some air in the tires. I won't even film that part, and then I'm going to find out why the low speed doesn't work. And then we'll pull a little coolant out of the overflow so it doesn't spill it on the ground. I think that's why you might think it's overheating, because you overfilled it and it spills some on the ground. It's the only thing I can come up with. Maybe I'll have them talk to Paul Harvey and try to get the rest of the story. I can't do it like he does. Classic. It is shaking quite a bit. It does not run terribly good. It's got a Sona 2 misfire. I didn't ask about that part though. Also noticed on this wiring diagram, it says the fuses are 59, 60, and 63, and it says they're in the battery junction box, left side of engine compartment. This is the battery junction box right here, left side of engine compartment, and the fuses only go up to 55. It looks to me like 59, 60, and 63 are not in there, unless they're in the bottom. Maybe it flips over. I have to look. I'm gonna have to find out where them fuses are, because something's not right. I'm thinking now, well, the misfires, I have to ask him if he wants to look into that, but I'm thinking the temperature gauge is going a little higher than he's used to seeing because the low fan doesn't work. So it waits till it gets to, the temperature goes up a few more degrees, then the computer will turn on the high fan. So I'm guessing that's what he's seeing. But I'm going to ask him about that and find out where these three fuses are. I found those fuses. They're in the bottom of the fuse panel, of course. The only way to really test them is to ohm them out, because you have to unplug the computer to get to the bottom of the fuse panel. And I don't know. Do I have to say it? I don't think I really need to say it at this point. Now that those fuses have been verified that they're good, what I have to do is see if power's come out of the fuse panel from the relays, or I can just try testing the relays. Maybe I'll do that. I'll put a test relay in and jump it out, see if the fan works on low. If it does, then I know the relay's bad, or the connection between the relay and the fuse, leaving the fuse box, is bad. If nothing happens, then there's definitely got to be something wrong in the fuse panel if jumping the relay out doesn't run the fan. Gotta get this under the cable, back into the little notches. Oh my goodness gracious, man. What do you Ford guys do, man? I guess maybe if you do it enough, then you just get used to it, and eventually you start thinking it's normal, like Stockholm Syndrome. Working on Fords all day long. How does Ford boss me do it? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of stupid stuff from every brand, but I don't know. It always seems to amaze me a little extra on some of this Ford stuff that there was no easier way they could have done that. Now you've reset memories and things to whatever these wiring connectors go to, BCMs, PCMs, whatever. You've cleared all the battery memory out. So. But I know the fuses are good, so we're getting somewhere. Oh, I am going to take those relays out. One of these is the relay for lower speed and one's for high speed. All three work the fans in different sequences to get a different amount of voltage to the motors. So we'll try jumping them out and see if we can get it to run on low. Alright, these relays are FC2, 3, and 1. And I tried all three of them. This runs the high speed fan. And these two in combination run the low speed right side fan, but it never runs it. So now I got to check to see if there's power coming out of the fuse panel. If there isn't, then the fuse panel's bad. If I have power coming out of whichever one of these connectors has the wires, which I think is the front one, but if I do have power coming out, then I have a broken wire going to the fan motor. But I don't think that's going to be the case because it runs on high speed and there's only 2 wires. Let's get this cover off and see if there's power coming out when I switch the relay on. We're going to pull this out while they try to get more diagnosis time. The misfire on cylinder 2 and temperature gauge reading higher than it usually does from not having a low speed fan. I've got an hour and 20 minutes already, and it pays an hour. And I told them I need more time to verify. I suspect the fuel injector in cylinder 2 because the misfire starts up when it gets hot and it's fine when it's cold. And the fan problem I've narrowed down, and the relays and fuses are good, so it's either power not coming out of the fuse panel or a broken wire between the fuse panel and the fan on that circuit. So I told them I need more time, a couple hours more labor to check that out and pinpoint it. I'm going to put this over here with the others, and then we're going to do the Cadillac thermostat. They need that back today, but I also explained that we need to do the thermostat to verify if the stability and steering codes are being caused by it. We'll see how that goes. What we're going to do is we're going to row our butts off, do a little dancing, and take it wherever it leads us. Oh, it is the right one. You got to be careful nowadays. You guys saw the other day, I think it was yesterday, there was like 4 or 5 Cadillacs on the property. So we were having a Cadillac bonanza. Usually it's BMW and Mercedes that happens with. It just happened to be Cadillacs for the first times that I can remember in a while. But in any event, the thermostat's 1.5 hours labor or 1.3 hours labor or something like that, so it should be pretty easy, right? They wouldn't pay it incorrectly, I'm guessing. And we're going to do an oil change too. We're going to knock that out real quick. Let's see what happens. Alright, from the dealership. We like to see that. Made in Mexico. Looks to me like it's under the intake manifold. I'm not really picking up on the half hour 1.3 or 1.4, whatever it was. Maybe it sneaks out of there? Nope. Yeah, no wonder why the dealership jumped all over it. I mean, the warranty company jumped all over it because we charge them an hour and a half for something that's probably supposed to be about 3 or 4 hours. Let me go look it up in the procedure. Maybe there's a way to sneak it out. Well, something's wrong. Just a heads up for you guys, if you do one of these, the labor guide says an hour and a half. You know what that means, right? You got to take off the decorative cover, the manifold cover, then the manifold. And once you take the battery and the battery tray and the PCM out, that way you can slide the tube out from under the injector rails. Otherwise you got to take the injector rails out too. But I believe that this separates, and you can just take the intake off and just replace this and not the tube. There's no damage to the tube or anything, just the thermostat. So I think that's what we're going to do. I'll put this new O-ring on the old tube and reuse the tube to save some time, but they're going to adjust the labor for me a little bit. I don't know, 2 or 3 hours or something like that. Just a heads up if you do one of these. Stupid GM. The adventure begins. Oh my goodness gracious me. That is a 25.
cash on you today? Huh? Riley said he'll go if you have cash.
There's no screws in the intake pump. So far, it's very stupid. Blow all this off real quick before I continue. That's where the brace is at for the manifold. Now it should be, I believe, 6 13mm bolts. All the complaining about? What is all the complaining about? I mean, I should be paying them, really. I try to lay my parts in some kind of an order so that things won't get missed on the way back in. That's where the thermostat is down there. It's easy, man. Come on. When I get done with this, I'm going to cut them a check. That's just how I roll. What's happening now is the thermostat sticks down the motor and the tube goes into the housing. So I can't lift it up and pull it out. I'm going to have to unbolt the tube and slide the tube out this way. At least take the bracket support bolt out just to move it away about a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, whatever it might take. So, fantastic job by the GM guys. They're trying to compete for dummies. Best dummy. All right, it's in there somewhere, trust me. I'm hoping, let me get a little extension. I'm hoping that I can loosen that bolt and leave the threads just barely in the block and just loosen it enough to get the tube out. There's no O-rings or anything over here. I just need to clear the housing. That's my plan once I get a 3-inch extension. Let's see now. I think I'm going to have to take this bolt all the way out. I barely got my fingertips on it. I mean, you guys have seen my fingers. It's ridiculous. They're a little short, a little chubby, a little thick. So what are you going to do? You know, you work with what you got. That's all. That's all you can do. Shake what your mama gave you. Come over here. Oh, look at this. That's nice. It's a nice long bolt too. It would have worked, but I didn't design it, so it is what it is. I might have to put a bolt back in the housing too to get it to stay in place, although when the thermostat pulls against the block a little bit, it'll let it knock out. This is exciting. It's like a new adventure. A tiny little piece of the sound insulation fell off the bottom, so I made it a little easier to get to it. I think now this will fit out of here, but we'll see. It might fit out, it might not, I don't know. The way they've been doing it so far, it probably doesn't fucking... That's Paul being annoying for fun, telling us the lunch is here. Because I didn't see him pull in right next to me with it. The question's going to be, how does it fit out? I don't know. I really wanted to pop it out of there before I went to eat lunch, so I'd feel better about it. Alright, I'll go eat something, and I'll do that afterwards. Well, got to take those little coolant tubes out. And that is the only way this bad Johnny fits out of there. I mean, I'm not sure where they come up with an hour and a half. I looked in the labor guide, that's what the labor guide says, hour and a half. They wonder why they can't get people that want to be mechanics. It's going to probably take me about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, so we should probably pay about 3.5. But I think it's an hour and a half once the intake's off, honestly. So you got to add the intake R&R labor to the thermostat R&R labor. These tubes are really soft metal. I thought I ruined one because I tweaked it a little bit. It bent right back. I'm hoping it's not going to be a problem. I shouldn't be too cocky yet. One good thing I can say about this job is no manufacturer stands alone as the one that's making things easier Everything's quite a bit more complicated. And I'm sure there's some kind of a reason. Maybe someone will tell me someday what the reason is to make things more complicated. Because it costs everybody more money. It costs them more money to assemble it. It costs me more money. It doesn't cost me more money really, but it costs the customer more money. The people that they sell their products to pay more money to fix and maintain it. And if they want to buy another one, that's even more money. I don't know what this deal is, but it's a little bit frustrating right now. Probably should shut up and just keep working on it. No good will come of it. Went ahead and found some Phillips screws for the air filter. It's funny, I made a video making fun of the hot air intake system that was on that car. It was destroyed. And someone's in there going, this idiot doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't intentionally destroy your hot air filter to make more power. He's being foolish. I wanted to say thanks for watching, but I couldn't do it. I said, you must be fun at parties. Alright, I want to rinse the coolant out of here, but I don't want to risk getting any water down in any of the cylinders. So I think I'll put the intake on and torque that down. And then I'll run some water in here to get that antifreeze out of there, because water will burn out of there a lot quicker than coolant will. That's my plan anyway. I'm gonna remove my insulators. They catch a majority of the dirt when you're cleaning, but there still might be a little particles, so I'll blow into the holes now and make sure I evacuate any little bits of debris that might have went in there. I always put my blow gun as far in as I can. You don't want to blow from here. If you put the blow gun all the way in, it forces out, right? This one's probably got open valves. Okay, should be good for the intake now. Where does this go? Aha! That way. Shows you how noisy the injectors must be to put this piece of foam in between. The intake is quite a bit easier to get on and off. That's the good thing. But other than that, poppycock, I say. 18 pound-feet for the intake, and the thermostat housing was 89 inch-pounds. If you're wondering. It also says not to reuse these intake bolts, to which I say, poppycock. They're not even torque to yield bolts. 18 foot-pounds is nothing. I don't know why they want you to replace them. I think torquing these bolts is way more important than replacing them, but I would like to have them replace them when we sell this kind of work, if it says in the instructions to replace them. Not an option though. Not up to me. I don't understand why there's a cover and another cover on it. Tiny little maps out here, Not critical fasteners, but still. And there's two 10s in the back on this bleed hose tube. We're on the home stretch. $8 millimeter, 8 millimeter, 10 millimeter. Alright, where's my coolant at? Drink and be well. Let us not celebrate yet, for an oil change must also be done. If you guys haven't seen my earlier videos, I always take the oil cap off, set it on a rag so it's obvious to see, and I lift the dipstick out. That way there's no oil in it. I'm going to lift it up and drain it. Once the oil's in it, those things are put back. So everybody here knows if I'm working on a car and they see that, I haven't put oil in it. I'm not saying it wouldn't be unusual for someone to want to pull a car out of the bay or start it up for something while I'm not here at lunch or whatever. They could just pull a dipstick out and look and see if there's oil in a dipstick, right? But if this is like this, they don't even have to bother. They can look from 20 feet away and they know I haven't done it yet. Just saves everybody a little time. And it also reminds me I haven't put oil in it. Oil definitely looks like it needed to be done. It's a little bit nasty. Sure is a tiny little oil pan on there, isn't it? Hey, let's see how tight the filter is while we're here. Oh, that's nice. That's how it's supposed to be, ladies and gentlemen. That is how it's supposed to be. And you know what else I'm going to do in this car? See that gasket? It's flush with the metal. So it needs a new rubber gasket. That's no good. There you go. Perfect. Torque to manufacturer specifications. That's exactly how tight they want. Oh look, I put the new gasket on there. See how it sticks above? Push it down, sticks above the metal. Fresh rubber. It probably wouldn't have leaked if I put it back together, but a little bit of insurance for 15 cents. Now some Rain Man Ray's special concoction. I don't think all the name dropping's getting me anywhere, but that's all right. That's who I think of every time I spray brake clean. It's not. So that's what someone told me, I was name dropping. I'm like, well, I've seen a lot of his videos. He uses a lot of brake clean. I'm just saying. When I work on my truck, I mention Chip Foose too. Not that I emulate him or that the phone's ringing, but I'd like to. I wouldn't mind being as good at metalwork as Chip Foose and his team are. You gotta always have the his team part because he does a lot of work himself, but he doesn't do everything. Not nearly everything. Six quarts of delicious golden dinosaur blood. Alright, maybe 5.998 quarts. Let's fire this thing up, see what happens. I'm gonna call that a win. Alright, oil change sticker. Tucked up in the corner, nice where it's discreet. And I reset the oil life to 100% using these buttons on the steering wheel. You go through the menu, and then you see oil life, it says 0%. You just hold select and you wait about 5 seconds and all of a sudden it goes beep beep and goes to 100%. I'm gonna take this thing for a little drive, but I am gonna let it warm up a little bit. Make sure the fan cycles. Make sure I get heat out of the heater core and there's no air pockets in it. These are pretty good about filling. It seemed to go pretty good. It just bubbled up into the reservoir. Bloop, 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 bloop. Then it stopped and stayed level. I squeeze on the radiator hoses to see if any more air comes up to the reservoir, and once it stops, it seems to be pretty good on these 3.6s, the newer ones. So that's the first thermostat I've done on one of them, and a little disappointed GM, but you guys already knew that. Every manufacturer nowadays, it doesn't matter. I used to be Toyota and GM preferred, knowing it, they all had their little quirks. But they always seem like Toyota and GM were some of the easiest ones to work on out of all of them, and they're reasonably inexpensive to repair, but I guess those days are gone. Let's see what's next. So I think I got a 2016 Chevrolet that the dealership couldn't fix like 4 different things on they wanted me to look at. I think that's next. Let's see. Uh-oh. This one should be fun. '16 Chevy Traverse. 2016 Chevy Traverse. It's only 6 years old. It's going to get about a 3.5 on the love scale, and the dealer couldn't fix a couple things on it. This was actually towed in, and then I saw the tow truck driver drive it off the tow truck, which is kind of weird. Got TPMS codes, check engine light on, voltmeters charging good. Got a lot of masks. They're very concerned. I don't want them bouncing on my knee though. I mean, Joe's out with COVID right now as it is, so. Steering wheel seems kind of centered. I'll go over the list of the stuff we're supposed to look at in this one with you guys in a second, once I get her in the bay here. I just heard a little weird noise from the steering. That's kind of strange. Why is this not lit up like it's supposed to be? Maybe that's one of the things on the list. All right. Test and inspect. Engine intermittently races. Difficult to refuel. Diag is AC button flashes on and off, then does not work. Previously repaired at the dealership for the same issue. Unsure if it is related to the original concern. Please advise if additional diag is required. Customers towed in. Rear windows only work from the master switch, and it will only go down, not back up. Diag AC button flashes on and off and does not work. Previously repaired at dealership for same issue. Unsure if this issue is related to original concern. Advise if additional diag is required. So it says a couple things twice. So there's not as much stuff on there as I thought. I wouldn't be surprised if this car also has a thermostat problem, because when the thermostats go out on these, it puts the check engine light on, it stops your AC from working, and it can take away other functionality too. Because thanks to the EPA, a thermostat is now an emissions related item. Which technically, I mean, if a thermostat sticks open, the engine's going to run a little cooler. You might lose 0.4 of a mile to the gallon or something, I guess. So I guess technically it is emissions related. Conundrum. Well, the first thing I think I want to do here is we're going to put the scanner on it. We're going to record the codes, send a report to Katie, start with a baseline. And then we'll take a quick look around based on the codes and see what we find. 115,712 miles on this fine Generous Motors product. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Alright, let's go ahead and get the vehicle in our Phoenix Light 2. You know what we're going to do here, right? We got a lot of complaints on this thing, so we're going to do a smart scan, aka topology. And while it's doing that, I'll go around and play with the windows a little bit. Smart scan, go for it, baby. Let's see. Windows only work from the driver's switch. That is interesting. Will it go back up from the driver's switch? Yep. Well, I'll tell you what that might mean. Usually the master switch provides the ground, and to keep your children from playing with the windows, yeah, they all go down and not up. Ah, the front ones go down and up. Only the back ones, the back windows, do not go up from their individual switches, but they go up from the master switch. Well, you know what? That's not even right. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Up, 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 up. And there's something going on in the switch. When I play with it, it works. That's the cancel button. It makes it so they'll only work from the master switch. With the cancel button on, let's see if it works at all down and up. Down or up, I should say. Down and up is canceled. So it's not caused by the cancellation switch, but it could be caused by this not letting it have a ground. If the master switch won't let it have a ground in one direction, then it won't work in the other direction, if that makes sense. I'll go over that with you guys a little more once I figure out what direction I need to go, and I'm spinning around in circles with the list of problems we potentially have. Coolant temperature circuit high. Coolant temperature circuit intermittent. Evap purge flow during non-purge. They said the dealership already put a purge valve in it, but it still does it. With the hard fueling or whatever the case may be with the fueling problem. It was intermittently races and difficult to refuel, which sounds to me more like a vent solenoid sticking. But you should purge flow during non-purge is a purge related code. Usually you won't get that from a vent being bad. Yeah, if the vent seals the tank pressure would rise if the purge valve's closed, because with heat there's expansion and increase of pressure, right? So if the vent sticks and the purge is closed like it's supposed to be, the pressure will rise, not decrease. When it blames the purge valve, it sees a vacuum increase or pressure decrease. Figure out what's going on. Hopefully it's not intermittent. All right, let me write these codes down. I'll send a report. I'm gonna get a wiring diagram for the windows and attack that first. That should be the quickest and easiest one. Maybe we'll get that done today. And then we'll look into the purge and vent problems. It looks to me like they could even have like a coolant temp sensor connector problem, or it's not plugged in kind of thing. We'll look at that real quick too. Let's not get it too much hotter. All right, let's work this. I'm gonna try to talk louder than they are, the guys that are 30 feet away from me. But the left rear window works from this switch up and down properly, right? But if I go to this switch, it does not work up. It only works down, not up. Even playing with it, I can't get it to work or do anything. It doesn't go up. What's interesting is, in the data, it never shows up or down from any switch, which is very strange. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's a glitch in the matrix. Maybe something's wrong in the application. Because there's two different systems, express and non-express. This car has non-express. I tried the express option, which will let you force the window up and down from the DCM, and this one would not respond. And so it says in the little pre-screen before you get into it that if it doesn't have the express option, it won't work, which is what it's doing. So in the non-express wiring diagram, you can see here I've drawn out, when you work the driver's switch, which is this one right here, driver's master window switch, when you tell it to go up, that switch doesn't work the motor. That switch goes to the logic module in the left rear door, tells it to go up, and then the logic module in the left rear door puts the window up. But from this switch that's internal with the same logic module, this switch is not telling it to go up on the same exact circuits. So this thing has to have a bad switch, because it works from this switch, not from this switch. And this switch tells this module to work the motor, just like this switch does. And the only difference is this switch isn't working. So same thing, and both rear switches have to be bad, because the driver's window will work the right rear up and down, and it goes through the logic module in the right rear door, which also uses the same circuits to run the motor up and down. So it just has to have two bad switches, unless there's some kind of a safety lockout thing that I can't find. It has it for the latch, and it wouldn't let the window go down and not up, I'm supposing. I am going to have to look through the options menu and see if there's some options in the cluster where you can stop your kids from putting the windows up, which normally wouldn't work that way. It would stop you from putting them down. So I'm 99.99% sure this thing needs two rear window switches, and because it's worked by a logic module and I can't get accurate data to see if it's even commanding it, that's what I'm going to go with. Next thing is check the coolant temp sensor and connector. Very high failure item on this, and when that happens, the AC won't work and a lot of the symptoms they're complaining about. And then if that's the case with that one, then the last thing will be the purge and vent system, and see what's going on with those. So let's get under the hood and look at that temp sensor and connector. I can't even get my, oh, what the heck? Look at that son of a bitch. 30 degrees. That'll turn your air conditioning off, you know. Thinks your engine's at 30 degrees. Let's start it up, see if it changes. Oh, fans are going crazy, going, what is going on? Now, if this was unplugged, it would read much hotter. And if it was shorted, it would read much colder. It might be the other way around. I'm going off the top of my head, but in any event, it wouldn't read 35 degrees. It would read minus 40 or 260, 255, whatever the higher temperature was. So something's definitely skewed in that temperature sensor. And the problem is intermittently turning off the air conditioning, making the fans run, check engine lights, and codes for a temperature sensor. So the problem is really hard to get to. I'm gonna have to look at it now. It's down to 26. It's getting colder while the engine runs. I'm pretty confident this thing's got a bad temp sensor. I gotta prove it out. It's getting colder and colder. Okay, I moved the vehicle forward so I could lift it up. shut it off, and came back out here with the key. I turned the key back on after turning it off, came out here, and the engine coolant temp jumped to 163, which is the actual temp. So this thing's, I'm going to recommend a temperature sensor and a connector. And we'll have a closer look at it while we're in there replacing it. Just make sure the connector's not broken or the pins aren't corroded or anything like that. But that's obviously got a problem with the sensor, because if there's a circuit, it would go completely open or closed. What that is, what's happening is that sensor is internally rapidly changing resistance, not based on the temperature. So the components inside the sensor go bad and let it fluctuate wildly, and that makes the temperature fluctuate wildly. It's not going open or shorted. Like I said earlier, the temperature would go way cold or way hot, or way cold or way hot. There you go, that's the right direction. So we're knocking off the list here a little at a time. We've got one more thing to check on this guy. I'm going to see if the purge valve is purging when it's commanded off. There's tons of vacuum right now. What does it think it's doing? I think it's minus 31 degrees. It's going to bring up evap data. It's got way more purge information in evap than it does in fuel trim. 15%, so it wants it open slightly. I'm going to go to tell it to shut it off. Go out here to functional tests, actuation test, evap system, purge solenoid valve, commanded state decrease. Okay, commanded state 0%. You can hear it stop clicking. Still sucking. It's got a bad purge valve. If you want to be 100% sure, it'll set a code, but you could unplug it electrically. In case something strange is going on with the driver or something like that. Now if you have purge, it's not even plugged in. And I mean, yeah, I definitely have a purge vacuum right there. If you guys can see that, but a piece of paper will show you. Holding the paper there. It's not even plugged in, so it's got a bad purge valve. So we figured all three of them out, no problem. All right, guys, closing up for the day, as you can see. Just you and me now. Thanks for spending the day with me. I hope you got something from it. I enjoyed having you here. I hope you'll torque the like button, and I hope I'll see you in the next video, because you're awesome.